Welcome to KMUZ Theater Talk. I'm your host, Ed Shopes. KMUZ Theater Talk comes your way the first and third Friday of every month with news and in-depth interviews about auditions and performances of plays and musicals running at theaters throughout the Mid-Willamette Valley. I have two great interviews for you today. The first is with Western Oregon University's theater professor, Kindra Steenerson, who's directing NORA, A Doll's House, playwright Steph Smith's modern reframing of the classic drama A Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen, set in three different time periods: the fight for women's suffrage, the swinging 60s, and modern day. We'll also hear from the actors playing the three Noras in this modern take on Ibsen's classic, opening at Western Oregon University's Rice Auditorium on February 26th. And in today's second interview, I talk with director Lorianne Schmidt and actor Frank Kern about Ride the Cyclone, a strange and hilarious musical about 6 members of a Canadian chamber choir stuck in limbo after dying in a freak roller coaster accident. But a mechanical fortune teller offers them a chance to return to life. Ride the Cyclone opens February 21st at Albany Civic Theatre. But first, here's the KMUZ Theater Talk calendar with news about auditions and shows happening at theaters in the Mid-Willamette Valley. At McMinnville area theaters, playing at Gallery Theater in downtown McMinnville, their 2025 season opens February 7th through March 2nd with the award-winning musical Fiddler on the Roof. This beloved tale of Tevye the dairyman and his family's struggles in a changing world continues to touch audiences worldwide with its humor, warmth, and honesty. Check out the KMUZ Theater Talk podcast for my behind-the-scene interview with director Seth Rennie and lead actor Lance Nutman. And Roald Dahl's Willy Wonka, with music and lyrics by Leslie Bricusse and Anthony Newley, will be on Gallery Theater's main stage May 2nd through 25th. This one's directed by Travis and Kalina Morgan. On the Gallery Theater call board, director David Bates will hold auditions February 9th and 10th for Edward Albee's masterwork, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? Rehearsals start in mid-August, and the show runs October 10th through 26th. Auditions for The Curious Savage by John Patrick and directed by Tonya Nichols happen March 16th and 17th at Gallery, and that play runs July 18th through August 3rd. For show information and tickets and to sign up for auditions, go to gallerytheater.org. At Greater Salem area theaters, on the Bridgetown Conservatory Salem call board, auditions are now open for Make Me a Song, the music of William Finn, directed by Seth Rennie. Rehearsals are March 31st through April 23rd in Salem. Performances are April 24th through 27th at the Verona Studio Theater in Salem and May 1st through 4th in Portland at Bridgetown Musical Theater. Also, registration is open now for Bridgetown Conservatory's spring term Broadway musicals of the 1950s class for teen and adult actors. Classes run every Saturday from March 29th through May 17th at Bridgetown's downtown Salem studio. See Bridgetown's Facebook page and website at bridgetownconservatory.org for show information and tickets, and to sign up for auditions and triple threat classes. Children's Educational Theater in Salem is at cetsalem.org, and if you want to register a new student for CET's popular 2025 summer program, you should sign up now at cetsalem.org before all the slots get filled. Classes start June 23rd and run through July 26th. Playing at Kaiser Homegrown Theater, Songs for a New World, a theatrical song cycle by Jason Robert Brown, continues at Kaiser Homegrown Theater through February 15th. Check out the KMUZ Theater Talk podcast for an interview with director Shalene Holbrook and 2 cast members who talk about this super interesting show. For show information and tickets, go to kaiserhomegrowntheater.org and their Facebook page. At Pinnacle Theater in Salem, tickets are selling fast for the first show of Pinnacle's 2025 season, the classic comedy Arsenic and Old Lace, directed by Scott Ramp, and that one runs through February 22nd. Get ready to laugh, gasp, and maybe think twice about that glass of wine. Arsenic and Old Lace is packed with hilarious mayhem, sinister twists, and unforgettable characters. Check out the KMUZ Theater Talk podcast for my interview with director Scott Ramp and several actors from the show. And March 21st through April 12th, Pinnacle Theater will present Big Fish, a beautiful musical based on the celebrated novel and film. It tells the heartwarming story of Edward Bloom, a traveling salesman with larger-than-life stories, and his son Will, who's determined to uncover the truth behind his father's epic tales. It's directed by Jill Sorensen. And on the Pinnacle Theater call board, director Jeff Sanders will hold auditions March 1st for The Glass Menagerie by Tennessee Williams. The show runs May 9th through 31st. Director Debbie Neal is holding auditions April 25th for Black Comedy by Peter Schaefer, and that show runs June 27th through July 19th. Joe Dodge's acting class for actors 18 and older winter session is underway now at Pinnacle Theater's rehearsal studio in downtown Salem. See the pinnacletheater.org website and Facebook page for tickets, audition information, and to sign up for workshops. The Salem Playhouse is an acting school for teens and adults, and classes for students in 8th through 12th grade are Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 4 to 6 p.m., and adult classes are Thursday evenings from 7 to 11 p.m. and Saturdays from 9 a.m. to noon. Go to thesalemplayhouse.com and click on the Classes tab for details and to sign up for classes. Theater 33 will hold its 2025 Summer New Plays Festival at Willamette University in Salem. Theater 33's screening committee is busy right now screening scripts in progress. I'll have more news for you about this summer's festival as soon as we hear more. Watch theater33.org and Facebook for festival details. At Stayton and Silverton area theaters, in 2025, the Brush Creek Playhouse in Silverton celebrates bringing 50 years of shows to their Little Red Schoolhouse stage. They'll celebrate this milestone with 14 different productions, the most in their long history. Go to brushcreekplayhouse.com and Facebook for show, ticket, and audition information. Playing at Spotlight Community Theater in downtown Stayton, a new musical adaptation of J.M. Barrie's classic story of Peter Pan is on stage right now through February 22nd at Spotlight. It's directed by Shannon Rempel. And on Spotlight Community Theater's call board, Spotlight is holding auditions at 6 p.m. February 11th for their Act on Radio production of 2 episodes from the old Burns and Allen radio program, Gracie Takes Up Crime Solving and Income Tax Problems. Parts are open for 9 adult male voices and 3 adult female voices. And director Frank Hernandez is holding open auditions at 1 p.m. March 1st at Spotlight Community Theater for Enchanted April, a romantic comedy set in an Italian villa. The show runs April 24th through May 4th. For show information, tickets, and audition details, go to spotlightct.com and Facebook. At Albany and Corvallis area theaters, Ride the Cyclone will run February 21st through March 15th at Albany Civic Theatre. In this hilarious and outlandish story, the lives of 6 teenagers from a Canadian chamber choir are cut short in a freak accident aboard a roller coaster. In Limbo, they meet a mechanical fortune teller who invites each to tell a story good enough to win the chance to return to life. Director Lorianne Schmidt and actor Frank Kern join me later in today's program to talk about this funny and fanciful show. On the Albany Civic Theatre call board, auditions for And Then There Were None, directed by Ken Long, happen February 24th through 26th at ACT, and auditions for Dial M for Murder, directed by Dan Bouchong, Josh Mitchell, and Christy E. Sears are coming up April 7th through 9th. For show information, tickets, and audition details, go to albanycivic.org and Facebook. At the Majestic Theater in downtown Corvallis, Amadeus will run March 7th through 16th, directed by Riley Lucas, and that's followed by My Fair Lady, running May 2nd through 18th. For information, tickets, and audition details, go to majestic.org and Facebook. At the Mid-Valley Colleges and Universities, Corbin University in East Salem is at corbinedu/theater-arts. Good Wives, Peter Clackam's stage adaptation of Louisa May Alcott's follow-up novel to Little Women, runs March 6th through 15th at Corban University. Director Tamara McGinnis and an actor from the show join me on our February 21st KMUZ Theater Talk program for a preview conversation. For show information and tickets, go to the corbin.edu Theater Arts page. Western Oregon University in Monmouth is at WOU.edu, and NORA, A Doll's House by Steph Smith and directed by Kindra Steenerson, plays February 26th through March 8th at the Rice Auditorium at Western Oregon University. This is a modern adaptation of the classic play A Doll's House, Henrik Ibsen's brutal portrayal of womanhood in 1879, which caused outrage when first performed. Playwright Steph Smith's new drama reframes Ibsen's work in 3 different time periods: the fight for women's suffrage, the swinging 60s, and modern day, to ask, how far have women really come in almost 150 years? Director Kindra Steenerson and 3 different Noras from 3 different time periods in this production join me later in today's program for a lively conversation. And closing out the WOU theater season, May 28th through 31st, is Tiny Beautiful Things by Cheryl Strayed and Nina Vardalos, directed by Raisa Fleming. For show information and tickets, go to the theater page at wou.edu or see their Facebook page. Willamette University Theater is in Salem at woutheater.com, and February 14th through the 23rd, Willamette Theater presents Far Away, an hour-long futuristic nightmare in 3 short scenes that envisions a world where the promise of violence broods and nothing is to be trusted. And closing the Willamette Theater season, April 11th through 26th, is Bloom, Bloom, Pow, the climate doom comedy inspired by 1950s monster movies and the real-life 2014 crisis in Toledo, Ohio, when the tap water became deadly to use. For show information and tickets, go to woutheater.com or see their Facebook page. And let's look at the Mid-Valley High Schools. Central High School in Independence is on Facebook and at chsperformingarts.net. Music of the Night, a performing arts cabaret and auction, happens at Central High on April 25th. And at Dallas High School, and they're at dhstheater.org and on Facebook at Dallas High School Thespians, Shakespeare's As You Like It comes to the Bowman Auditorium February 27th through March 1st. At the Salem area high schools, McKay High School is on Facebook at McKay Thespians, and McKay's Student Talent Night happens February 21st, and their spring show is still to be announced. McNary High School is on Facebook at Ken Collins Theater, and McNary's One-Act Festival happens February 20th through 21st, and Peter and the Starcatcher will run May 14th through 17th on the McNary High School stage. North Salem High School is at nshstheater.com and on Facebook at NSHS Theater. Paragon Springs, Stephen Dietz's vibrant and often funny reimagining of Henrik Ibsen's An Enemy of the People, puts the lure of capitalism and the greed of small-town self-interest squarely on trial. Auditions are March 10th, and the show runs May 1st through 3rd at North Salem High School. Failure, a Love Story comes to the North Salem High stage in May. Tuneful songs and a whimsical chorus follow the story of Nellie, Jenny, June, and Gertie as they live out their lives above the family clock repair shop near the Chicago River before their time unexpectedly runs out. It's a magical musical fable where the power of love is far greater than anyone's successes or failures. Auditions are on March 10th, and the show runs May 22nd through 24th. And South Salem High School is on Facebook and Instagram at Saxon Drama. The spring show at South Salem High School will be 12 Angry Jurors, and that runs May 15th through 17th. And at Sprague High School, Neil Simon's rollicking comedy Rumors runs February 27th through March 6th, and Sprague's One-Act Festival happens May 15th through 17th. West Salem High School is at westsalemdrama.com and on Facebook at West Salem Drama Department. Shakespeare favorite Twelfth Night is coming to West Salem Stage in May. And that's a wrap for today's KMUZ Theater Talk calendar for plays and auditions at your favorite theaters throughout the Mid-Willamette Valley. And if your Mid-Valley Theater has a play or audition coming up, please send it our way at kmuztheatertalk@gmail.com. A Doll's House, Henrik Ibsen's brutal portrayal of womanhood in 1879, caused a howl of criticism when first performed. His consistently relevant play has been a theatrical staple for nearly 150 years. NORA, A Doll's House by playwright Steph Smith runs February 26th through March 8th at the Rice Auditorium in Western Oregon University in Monmouth. Smith has reframed Ibsen's drama by placing NORA in 3 different time periods: during the fight for women's suffrage, in the swinging 60s, and in the modern-day women's rights era, to ask, how far have women really come in almost a century and a half? Joining me today to talk about NORA, A Doll's House are director Kindra Steenerson and the 3 Noras from this play, Savannah King, Elliot Grass, and Brianna Trickle. Welcome to KMUZ Theater Talk, everyone.
Hi, how are you?
So tell me about the 3 Noras. Who are they, and why do you have 3?
Well, we have with us today Bree, Savannah, and Elliot. And there are 3 Noras because this play takes place across 3 different time periods, which often intersect in weird and surprising ways. But none of them are in the actual time period that Henrik Ibsen wrote the original Doll's House. So we're in 1920, 1970, and 2020.
What is different about this script that distinguishes it from the original production?
Well, I think that's one of the most interesting things. Certainly the time periods are different. And clearly we've had a lot of things that have happened socially and politically in the world. But I think the overarching theme of the play is that as much as things change, they stay the same. And so the original tackled issues like, social institutions like marriage, gender roles, freedom of choice, the impact of money on relationships. And this is kind of delving into all of that, but in those different time periods.
So which Nora is from the earliest time period?
That would be Elliot, our 1920.
Well, Elliot Grass, welcome back to Theater Talk. You're not a stranger to this program. It's good to hear from you again.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
Tell me a little bit about your Nora and her story.
So 1920 Nora is coming off of just getting the right to vote from the women's suffrage movement. And that impacts her character a lot because she's being surrounded by this fight for women's equality, but she's still facing a lot of, I want to say, judgment and hostility from her inner life, which I think is interesting.
So suffrage is of the day, but it's still not a woman's world. What are the continuing challenges that your character faces?
She struggles because women in the workplace are still like an almost unheard of idea at this point. She struggles to know her place in the world. Mm-hmm. There's still so much oppression towards women that came from the decades before, that even though she has this aspect of freedom, she doesn't quite know what to do with it because there's still so much of her life that is controlled by men and by the people around her.
And Brianna Trickle, you're the second Nora. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about your character and her time period and the challenges that she faces.
So my time period is right at 1970. So my Nora is getting all this input from her friend Christine, who is more involved in women's rights at the time. And this is the time where abortions with Roe v. Wade is being talked about, and legal access to birth control and stuff like that, where it's more mainstream. Women can vote, but they're starting to fight for more rights. She doesn't really understand that. She never had access to those things before. And so she's being introduced to this whole new world through her friend, Christine.
Savannah King, you're from the most current era. Tell me a little bit about your Nora's struggles and the challenges that she is facing.
We have set my NORA in 2020. And so obviously we can't ignore the fact that there is a pandemic happening at this time, though we aren't really leaning into that. However, I think that does play a really big impact on the confinement that NORA feels. My era is also in the time of the Me Too movement. And so she faces a lot of struggles with gender equality and with sexual assault and harassment. A lot of challenges that she faces are within those realms of like confinement. She's not able to really go outside. She's not really able to live outside of her world. And her world right now is really, it's dark. And there's not a lot that she can do to change it at this moment, or so she feels that she can change at this moment.
Wow, that sounds really fascinating. Kindra, I understand that the time sequence in this is a little bit unusual. Can you describe that for me?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most challenging things about the piece, honestly. So, and what's interesting too is the playwright specifies that the three women, even though they are often on stage at the same time and talking together, but not to each other in scenes, that they don't acknowledge each other. There's only one moment, and it's very brief, where they acknowledge each other, and then they go back to not acknowledging each other. So that's a challenge. And the actors will tell you it sucks because you're so used to being on stage and interacting with your scene partners. But if they're not supposed to be acknowledging each other, they can't look at each other. And so often the male characters, there's only one male character across all three periods. And so often all three Noras are talking with one actor. And so it's really hard to figure out even where to focus. We have to make it really clear so the audience understands. So that's probably been one of the most challenging things about it, is this kind of very fluid sense of time. And the place is the same because we're always in Nora's house, in the doll's house. But time really just is completely fluid.
Had Ibsen, the playwright who wrote The Doll's House 2 centuries previous to today, had lived through the 20th century, this sounds to me like a fever dream he would have.
Yeah.
And struggle to try and figure all of this out. Steph Smith, who is the playwright, really has created an unusual world. Brianna, what do you look forward to when you go to rehearsal and think about your character? What is it that really drives you?
I think one of the things I find the most interesting about my Nora is the face that she puts on in front of the males in her life and the face that she puts on in front of her friend Christine, and how those worlds kind of collapse and she comes into her own understanding of what she thinks for the first time. And it's just an internal struggle that I find really fascinating about her.
And Elliot, do you have a favorite part of the show that you look forward to?
I do. Throughout the whole show, I feel like Nora 3 sort of has this quiet rage that she just lets sit and simmer and doesn't really let out until a scene towards the very end where she gets to unleash it all. And it's really fun to do.
And what is her rage toward?
Her rage is towards her husband, Thomas, and all of the things that she's had to suffer through because of him. And she's mourning what her life could have been without him.
How do you feel about the interrelationship or non-interrelationship or the collisions or the connections between you and the other two Noras?
I think it's a challenge to, get all the words and all the overlapping, but it feels empowering to have these three women across these time periods all speaking with the same voice and going through the same issues and having each other to rely on, even if we can't really see each other or interact with each other.
And Savannah, when you're on stage with these other two Noras, what is it that interests you the most about your relationships with them and the eras that they represent?
I think something that's really interesting is the energy that we just get to play off of. As Kindra said, we are not able to interact to each other. However, there is a very strong energy as we are all on stage together, especially when we are all talking to Thomas or to another character. there's this very almost like in sync way that I just feel we all come on and we are breathing like the same air almost. It is so great to just stand on stage, and I've had many moments where I'm just like listening to Brie or Elliot and I'm just like, wow, like I am so lucky to be in a room with these people because we're all just so passionate about this project. And I think that is also something that has brought so much more to this. We all just care a lot, and you can tell by the way that they're working and we work together. That's been really interesting for me, is just like the energy exchange. Even though we're not allowed to really interact, we feel each other. And so that's been really special.
Kindra, as the director, tell me about the vision that you brought to this production.
Well, the vision in part is kind of put out for you in terms of the way that time undoes itself in the production. So then it was just kind of figuring out how best to center the relationships and the themes around what is my interpretation of the playwright's intent. So really trying to find moments both physically in space to connect or disconnect the actors, because I feel like this show is very much about connection. And so trying to fine tune where are the moments where people are coming together and what are the quiet moments of real reflection and contemplation about getting crystal clear on exactly what is the fight that Nora's fighting, for example, because she doesn't even know what it is until she knows what it is. And so focusing in on the themes and the movement has been really kind of my focus. And I am not someone who generally sets blocking and then forgets about it and, it stays the same. And it might be driving the actors crazy. But that's the other thing about this show, is that I knew it would be a very fluid process and that it would be a very challenging process. And it's challenging for me just in terms of staging. And it's also challenging for the actors because of the way that we're working with it. And, Savannah said they're also passionate about the project. This group of students is amazing to work with, and they're so dedicated. I mean, that's half the battle right there. Makes my job easy.
Well, let's talk about the staging a little bit.
Yeah.
How are you presenting this show? Are you being really realistic with it, or very abstract, or how's that working?
The set is fairly realistic because we thought that that was important. And we also wanted to play around with the idea of the house closing in around Nora. And so we're doing that with just some simple flown elements that come in crowding Nora as the play goes on. And it's pretty subtle. It's not going to be real effect that people would go, what's happening? At least if we do it the way we envision it. But it will close in on the Noras over time as she feels more and more claustrophobic and needs to go find her own way in the world. And then there's a pivotal moment where it all flies out.
What do you hope the audience is going to take away from this play, Kindra?
Well, I think first and foremost, I hope that they go away reflecting this idea that the world turns, we become more modern, more advanced, hopefully more knowledgeable, and yet we are still kind of fighting with some elements of what it means to be human that really don't change that much over time. There are aspects around them that change over time, but I think, certainly the idea that being too adherent to gender roles is limiting to not just women, but also men. And that's something else we see in this show. It's not just that the Noras are frustrated and confined in a way that limits their humanity. So are the male characters. I hope the audience will go away reflecting on how important it is to, as an individual, have the freedom to choose your life, to choose your thoughts, to choose, which path you want to take and not have it condemn you in any way. And I think also that there's a real message in this production specifically, or in this play, that is a little bit there in Ibsen too, but that is that, money, as the old saying goes, really is the root of all evil, and that having money or the lack of money leads to people behaving in ways that is destructive.
Well, joining me today have been director Kindra Steenerson and actors Savannah King, Elliot Grass, and Brianna Trickle from Western Oregon University's production of NORA, A Doll's House, a really interesting play written by Steph Smith that brings Ibsen's original idea for A Doll's House into the 20th and 21st centuries. For show information and tickets, go to WOU.edu and click on the Theater and Dance link. The play runs February 27th through March 8th in the Rice Auditorium at Western Oregon University. Thank you so much, Kindra, Savannah, Brianna, and Elliot for joining me here on KMUZ Theater Talk to talk about NORA, A Doll's House.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there's an interesting show that's going to open at Albany Civic Theatre on February 21st. It's called Ride the Cyclone. It's a musical with music and lyrics by Brooke Maxwell and Jacob Richmond. It's really an interesting show. The story is 6 teenagers from a Canadian chamber choir are on a trip together, and their lives are cut short in a freak accident aboard a roller coaster. And when they wake up in limbo, a mechanical fortune teller invites each of them to tell a story. And if they tell a good story, they wind up reincarnated. This is a fascinating story to me, and I have director Lorianne Schmidt and actor Frank Kern with me today to talk about Ride the Cyclone. Welcome to Theater Talk, you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lorianne, how did you find out about this show? What brought you to it?
Well, it's very interesting because it's not a show that has gotten a lot of Broadway recognition or Tony Awards. It was a show introduced to me by my students, actually, my drama students. They said, "Oh, you've got to see that. You got to watch the show." I found it on YouTube and it just fascinated me. I got really interested in directing it because I noticed that not a lot of places were doing it, but it was wildly popular with the teens and 20-somethings around. And apparently it got super popular on TikTok over the pandemic and went viral in many different arenas and just really fascinated me. It's such a interestingly deep yet superficial yet deep dive into death and living and lives cut short and all of that.
So how can it be superficial and deep at the same time? I'm a little confused.
Well, you listen to the music, and if you listen to each song unto itself, there's a lot of meat in each song, but you really need the context around each song to really understand the nature of what these kids are talking about. And so each individual song is really awesome in and of itself, but when you tie them all together and you string all of the conversation between the songs together, you really realize that, wow, this is really saying a lot about death and grief.
What is your vision for this show, Lorianne?
My vision is to take the audience along for the ride. I think that I want to take them to ride the cyclone. There is so much thought and intention behind it, and there's a great video on YouTube that is essentially the author and various original artists talking about the creation of this piece and the thought that went into it. And my hope is just to take that and really bring that forward and embody everything that the wonderful lyricists and librettists wanted us to give to the audience.
Well, you have a small cast, and I'm assuming a young cast in this show.
Yeah, we do. And actually, it kind of blew me away. We had 55 auditioners for 7 parts.
Wow.
And there's one speaking only role, which is the fortune teller, which is a person who can be any gender expression, any age. And we got a number of people who just tried out for that, even though that part doesn't sing. And we had a huge crowd of folks audition for the 6 students. It was really amazing.
Well, what thrills me is just looking at the cast of characters. The first one that pops up on Albany's website is the amazing Karnak. I'm betting that most of the people in your cast don't know the origin of that name.
Probably not, given their age demographic.
For those of us who are of the earlier television as opposed to YouTube generation, Karnak was a regular character that Johnny Carson played on his late night show.
Yep.
And made funny one-liners by hearing the answers to a question and making up the question. The reverse fortune telling. Does the amazing Karnak play a similar role in this production?
Not really. The amazing Karnak started out life as a mechanical fortune teller who could very easily predict the time and place of one's death. And since that was not something that was considered family friendly to have at a carnival, he states at the beginning that he was set to family fun mode and therefore delivered much more benign fortunes. And but he still retained the ability to predict one's death, including himself. And he is about to die from his power cord being chewed on by a rat named Virgil. And so in his final hours, he wants to gift one of these kids the gift of life.
Oh, that's fantastic. Frank, you're playing an interesting character, Misha Baczynski. Tell us a little bit about Misha and what their fortune is.
He is originally from the Ukraine. He has a very wild backstory that is divulged more in the show. He basically comes from this very rough background in Ukraine and gets practically moved against his will to this small town in Canada. And he just has a very hard time transitioning. And so to process his emotions, he ends up becoming a rapper on YouTube. So he has this whole YouTube channel, and that's where he meets his girlfriend on his YouTube channel from Ukraine, and they become engaged, and so he has this whole online persona and thinks he's this hardcore bad boy type character that can't really interact with any of these other choir students that have known each other since, pre-K and have grown up with each other all this time. And he just showed up like a few years ago. And so he has a very hard time processing his emotions. It's been an interesting challenge figuring out how to be this guarded character that is only able to actually step out of his comfort zone and find connection with his fellow students after his death.
So are you the awkward one?
I think he's awkward in his own way, for sure. He just tries really hard to be cool. He's just trying really hard.
What's the relationship like between Misha and the other students in this story?
None of us really, even though we're in the choir together, none of our characters really know each other. We know of each other. We know each other's names. We think we know each other, but it isn't until we're in this afterlife and we're having to sing about ourselves and tell this fortune teller about our lives that we start to learn about each other. And so I think he's kind of just ambivalent to these kids and thinks he's the coolest one and that he's too cool to be friends with these people and just is so guarded in that nature. But as he starts to learn about these kids that he's been in this choir with, he starts to realize that they're actual people with stories, and he really starts to become very fascinated by them.
There are a number of really interesting character names in this show.
Oh, definitely.
Besides the amazing Karnak, played by Bill Brown, we've got Ocean O'Connell Rosenberg, which is a collision of culture, played by Cassidy Vaffi, and of course, Misha Bashinsky, played by you, Frank, and Noel Gruber, played by Anthony Ashe, Ricky Potts, played by Gavin LaRoche, Constance Blackwood, by Melissa Gutierrez, and Jane Doe, a name you don't often see in a cast list, played by Sophia Rocha. Lorianne, this young, vibrant cast, what's it been like at rehearsals doing a madcap show with a really energetic cast like this?
Oh, super high energy. There's so much energy in the space when we get together. And I'm so pleased this cast has gelled so quickly and so well. They are amazing, amazing people beyond, the talent that they display on stage. And just to give you a little glimpse of how much energy there is around this show, when we had auditions, everybody was so gracious and encouraging of each other and one another. And a few people had to stop and restart, and the whole room was, you can do this, you got this, you're amazing. It was so wonderful. And when we got to callbacks, I'd never had a callback where I didn't have to teach any of the songs. The kids all had them mostly memorized. And for the kids who weren't singing at the time, they all sang the backup to all the songs. And so it was like this wonderful, amazing thespian energy that just permeated the auditions and now has continued on into rehearsals. It's just really exciting.
How many of these people in your cast are in school currently in Albany?
Well, we have a couple of kids from the Corvallis area. And Frank, you go to Western Oregon, correct?
Yes, I'm a student at Western.
Gavin is from Kaiser, and Anthony and Melissa both live in Albany. So we're just a cast from all over the place. It's wonderful.
It's a real regional show, I guess.
It is. It is.
Tell us how the staging of this show is working out. Are you using a carnival theme or something else?
Yeah, we're using a carnival theme. The book states that this is where all the dead things go, basically, from the carnival. So it's a big storage room where everything's broken and things are discarded and unwanted. And so I find that a really interesting setting for these kids to end up in their limbo in this discarded place.
So it's like my garage, in other words.
Yes.
where things go to die. In a setting like this, what have been the challenges to blocking and staging this show?
Well, it's interesting because the cast is largely on stage the whole time. There's some costume changes as each of the people sing their song. The rest of the cast join in as kind of the backup to all of that. And so to whatever's being played. So they kind of step out of themselves and become part of this each student's story. And so there's some costume changes, but by and large, everybody is on stage the whole time. And so without this isn't a house where people come and go and there's conversation. This is this weird sort of liminal space where anything can happen, all of a sudden, Ricky comes out in a 1970s space outfit,
Wow.
just anything can happen in this space. So we're trying to fill the space with a lot of things to provide visual entertainment for the audience and to give that sense of this is where all the broken things end up.
Frank, as an actor, you have to prepare for each rehearsal, and I know when I'm preparing for rehearsal, there are things that I think about when I'm on my way to the theater. What are you thinking about in the car on the way to the theater at rehearsals at this point, and what do you hope to be thinking about closer to opening?
A number of playlists that I listen to in the car with songs that remind me of my character, so that's always helpful to get into the mindset of this crazy character that I'm playing. I'm really just trying to live in the moment during rehearsals, just figuring out how this character's relationship to the other characters changes over the course of this show, because his point of view of these characters and opinions of them change drastically.
Is there a moment that you look forward to? Do you say to yourself, wow, I get to do this thing today?
Well, I have a whole song where I rap in a thick Ukrainian accent. And I don't know, it's something I've never had to do on stage before, and so that's always a joy. And then I, of course, after my rap, turn around and sing a powerful love ballad in Ukrainian as well. So there's just such a hard shift in my character, and that's been really fun. I've also just been really enjoying being in the background of so many scenes and trying my best to live in the weird warehouse facility that we've all been dumped in, and just reacting to what other people are doing on stage. I haven't had the chance to feel like I'm an ensemble member for a while in a show, and it's been really nice to take a step back and just be able to appreciate what other people are doing on stage as well, and grow in that respect.
Lorianne, what do you think the main message is in this play? What do you think people are going to be talking about in the car on the way home after seeing it?
I think that really the message here is an exploration of what would you do, and what would your song be, and what would your reflection on your life be like if you were in the same situation. And I think that in this show, we get to see, each one of these kids sort of pick apart that question. In essence, they are us, really. And in that, what would you sing about if you were in this limbo space?
Ride the Cyclone with book, music, and lyrics by Brooke Maxwell and Jacob Richmond is playing at Albany Civic Theatre February 21st through March 15th. It's a fun, modern musical. The cast is young and energetic. It's directed by Lorianne Schmidt, and actor Frank Kern has joined her here on KMUZ Theater Talk to tell us all about it. Tickets are available at albanycivic.org. Go see it. Have fun. This is going to be a real blast. Thank you very much, Lorianne and Frank, for joining me here on KMUZ Theater Talk.
Thank you, Ed. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having us.
Well, it's time to wind up today's KMUZ Theater Talk program. Thanks for listening. Next Friday at 9 a.m., tune in to KMUZ at 100.7 FM to hear Talking About Art with Joel Zack. KMUZ Theater Talk is proud to partner with the Mid-Valley Theater Network and Press Play Salem. KMUZ Theater Talk comes your way at 9 a.m. the first and third Friday of the month on KMUZ Community Radio at 100.7 and 88.5 FM. Also on KMWV FM Dallas at 98.3 HD2 and streaming worldwide at KMUZ.org and on the KMUZ mobile app. And you can also listen to any of our KMUZ Theater Talk podcasts anytime, wherever you get your podcasts. I'll be back February 21st with a brand new KMUZ Theater Talk program. Meanwhile, stop by the KMUZ Theater Talk Facebook page for news and updates about live theater in the Mid-Willamette Valley. And just a note that February 8th through 15th is our KMUZ Winter Pledge Drive. It's your chance to become a monthly donor to KMUZ and help support the excellent local programming you love to listen to. And now through PRX, the Public Radio Exchange, we've added the best selection of nationally recognized programs to KMUZ's broadcast schedule. I invite you to tune in to the special programming KMUZ will be airing February 8th to 15th during the Winter Pledge Drive. It'll be a great treat for your ears. And I'm also asking you to please help keep KMUZ Theater Talk and the rest of KMUZ's great community radio programs coming your way by becoming a sustaining member. It's easy. Go to kmuz.org, click on Pledge to your favorite show, or the Winter Pledge Drive, or the Donate box, and choose KMUZ Theater Talk. And thank you for your support. Until next time, I'll see you in the front row.